Imani Raynor began working at the Bridgemont building on a cold, gray winter morning. She arrived earlier than the receptionist, carrying her mop, a metal cleaning bucket, and a pair of worn-out sneakers. She moved without a sound, without conversation, without seeking attention. And that's exactly how she survived in this place. No one asked her name. No one looked her in the eye. People passed by her the way you'd pass an old billboard, faded, irrelevant. Occasionally, someone might offer a curt, half-hearted nod, never looking up from their phones. Most didn't even bother. To them, she was just the cleaning girl. Some dropped trash moments after she had finished mopping. Others accidentally spilled coffee, then walked away as if nothing happened. The jokes about bleach smells, black janitors, and diversity hires echoed down the halls each morning like a background soundtrack that no one believed she could understand. Or worse, no one cared if she did. But Imani understood, and she remembered. Every dismissive glance, every snide chuckle, every hallway conversation between executives who assumed the only ears nearby didn't matter. Some joked she should be thankful just to have a job here. Others called her background furniture. One intern once asked his manager, "Is she an internal employee or, like, outsourced?" That word, outsourced, stuck with her, but she never flinched. She didn't react. She simply bent down, wiped up the coffee, and made a small note in the tiny black notebook she kept tucked beneath the lining of her cleaning cart. Because while everyone else made her invisible, Imani saw everything. She saw who got promoted without merit. She saw who got laid off with no explanation. All of them immigrants, people of color, or quiet types who never caused trouble. She saw the off-the-record meetings, the whispered threats, and the glass walls that never let certain people in. Imani didn't just clean up trash, she collected truth. And in the silence of those long nights, a plan began to take root. Slowly, patiently, and in a way no one ever saw coming. By day, Imani was a janitor. By night, she was a law student. When the building emptied out, when keyboards fell silent and phone lines rested, when the only sound left was the low hum of the air conditioner. That's when her second life began. Imani lived in a small apartment on the southern edge of the city, just past the freight station, where the nightly train whistles slipped through the window slats and into her sleep. Her desk was made of cheap plywood, pressed against the wall, holding an aging laptop, photocopied law textbooks, a stubby pencil, and a thick notebook scribbled full of notes. The desk lamp flickered more often than not, but she was used to it. She had enrolled in an online law program from a public university just a month after taking the janitorial job. She paid tuition in installments, funded partly by her meager wages, and the rest with a student loan signed in her name. She didn't tell anyone, not even Malik, her younger brother, whom she'd taken care of ever since their mother passed away from cancer. Malik knew his sister worked hard. He didn't know she was learning how to take on the world. Imani studied like her life depended on it. She memorized labor codes, dissected case law, and learned to identify the subtle yet brutal mechanics of systemic discrimination. She didn't just read legal textbooks, she devoured them, especially those dealing with wrongful termination, hostile work environments, and racial bias in corporate structures. At the same time, she quietly built her case. Every misplaced email, every overheard comment in the hallway, every suspicious edit on employee schedules, every undocumented layoff of people who looked like her. She cataloged it all, with dates, times, and digital backups, stored across encrypted folders and cloud drives under fake usernames. She wasn't doing this out of revenge. She was doing it to survive, because too many people like her had been pushed out, not because they lacked talent, but because they lacked power. Every night after her online lectures, Imani would sit back and stare at the screen. She would imagine a courtroom, a sharp navy suit, a folder in her hand, and across from her, the faces of those who once looked through her like she wasn't even there. In those daydreams, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply presented the truth, undeniable and clear. It wasn't fame she wanted. It wasn't wealth. It was something far more powerful, to be heard. And deep down, she knew. One day, that moment would come. Imani always believed she could endure, that if she stayed quiet long enough, worked hard enough, and prepared thoroughly enough, she could keep hiding in the shadows until the moment was right. But one night, something pushed her too far. It was a damp, uneventful Tuesday evening. Rain tapped lightly against the windows of the Bridgemont building. The executive team was working late in the boardroom on the 16th floor, preparing for an upcoming shareholders meeting. Imani was cleaning just outside when she heard a burst of laughter from behind the glass door. The kind of laughter that turns your stomach before you even know why. Trevor Hayes, a mid-level executive with a fondness for whiskey and cruelty, was speaking louder than usual. "You know what's funny?" he slurred, leaning back in his chair. "That janitor chick, Imani or whatever, she looks like she dropped out in 8th grade." Another voice chimed in. "Yeah, one of those who thinks hard work is all you need, as if scrubbing toilets is noble." A third chuckled. "She's exactly the kind of person DEI is made for. Smile, check the box, and forget she's there." Imani froze. Her hand clutched the mop handle so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her face stayed calm. She stepped back quietly, entered the janitor's supply closet nearby, and closed the door. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She opened her phone and pressed record, holding the mic close to the cracked door, letting it capture every word echoing from that glass-walled room. That night, something inside her broke. Not with pain, but with clarity. The next morning, Bridgemont sent a company-wide email announcing another round of strategic downsizing. At the bottom of the list, Imani Raynor, night janitorial staff, contract terminated due to budget restructuring. No thank you. No face-to-face meeting, just a sentence, cold and final. 5 years of quiet labor, erased in one digital breath. Imani sat alone in her small apartment, her law lecture still playing softly on her laptop. She stared at the email, then closed her eyes. One tear slid down her cheek. Only one. But it was enough. That was the breaking point. From that moment on, Imani didn't just gather evidence. She began constructing a strategy. She built a master spreadsheet titled Truth Table. It listed every discriminatory policy, every unethical firing, every manager involved. Times, dates, witnesses. It was organized like a case file and secured across multiple encrypted drives. She wasn't just surviving now. She was planning to strike. She joined a quiet legal forum used by law students and young attorneys. There she learned how to prepare a shareholder complaint, how to request an internal audit, how to build pressure from the inside. She named the document The Quiet Reversal, and she kept going to work until her final shift, still mopping, still emptying bins, still smiling at those who walked past. No one knew, but this time Imani was walking out of the shadows. 1 week after being terminated, Imani walked back into the Bridgemont building, not in a janitor's uniform, not pushing a cart. She wore a sharp black blazer, dark jeans, and white sneakers. Nothing flashy, but just enough to make heads turn in the lobby where she used to mop the marble floors. Her employee badge still worked. She knew it would. Carlos, the night security guard, had checked it for her the night before. "If you need to go in," he had said with a knowing glance. "I didn't see anything." Imani stepped into the elevator and pressed floor 21, executive boardroom. Inside, the board was preparing for a closed-door strategy session. Brent Wallace, the new CEO, stood at the head of the table, confidently outlining his lean growth approach, cutting support staff, automating operations, and reallocating resources toward executive priorities. No one noticed the door open until she spoke. "Excuse me, I'm here on behalf of 11.4% of this company's voting shares." The room froze. She walked forward, placed a thick folder in the center of the table, and looked Brent in the eye. "My name is Imani Raynor, former night janitorial staff, current proxy representative and minority shareholder, legally recognized under Section 8.1 of Bridgemont's Shareholder Rights Agreement." Brent stared at her, then let out a laugh, the same arrogant chuckle she had heard too many times. "Are you serious? Who let the help in here?" "I'm not here for permission," Imani said calmly. "I'm here to file a formal request for independent investigation and corporate audit, and I have the votes to support it." One of the older board members, Adele Monroe, thumbed through the folder. Her face shifted as she turned each page. Internal emails, spending reports, unauthorized layoffs, even a hotel receipt from a non-existent business conference. These documents are legitimate, Adele said, and troubling. Brent's smirk cracked. This is absurd. She's nobody. She cleaned bathrooms. Imani didn't flinch. I cleaned what was dirty, she said, and today that includes this board. The silence in the room was deafening. Another board member raised his hand. I received her proxy. So did 3 others. Then another. I gave her mine too. The dominoes fell. Brent's face flushed red. You can't do this, he stammered. Watch me, Imani replied, opening the second folder. Under the company's bylaws, any shareholder with over 10% voting interest may call for leadership review and removal. Section 7, Subclause B. I have 11.4%. You gave me no choice when you dismissed me like I didn't exist. But I never stopped existing. I just started preparing. No one spoke. Brent reached for a glass of water, his hands shaking. This is a stunt, he snapped. You think you can pull off a coup wearing sneakers? Imani looked him dead in the eye. I dress for the work I do. You dress for the image you want. That's the difference. Adele leaned forward and said quietly, she didn't come here with accusations. She came here with receipts. The boardroom, once a place where decisions were made above her head, now echoed with a different truth, the one no one saw coming. News spread faster than any official memo Bridgemont had ever issued. Within 24 hours of the meeting, whispers turned into Slack threads. Screenshots of Imani standing at the head of the boardroom table, sleeves rolled, folder in hand, began circulating across departments. The subject line of an anonymous internal email read, Janitor turns shareholder and turns the tide. By the end of the week, nearly every department had seen it. Some watched in awe, some in disbelief, others in quiet shame. The IT team unearthed misfiled communications and quietly compiled them. A receptionist forwarded a recording of a verbal threat she'd once been too scared to report. A data analyst, who'd been pushed out 2 years earlier, emailed Imani directly. The subject line read simply, thank you, for all of us. Then came the open letter. 87 signatures, custodians, kitchen staff, parking attendants, mailroom clerks, all pledging their support. We didn't know she had a law degree. We didn't know she held shares. We only knew she treated us like people, and we watched her do what no one else had the courage to. Meanwhile, Brent Wallace was placed under formal investigation by the board. His spending habits, firing practices, and department restructuring plans were suspended pending review. External auditors were called in. An emergency vote passed to create a temporary oversight committee, and Imani Raynor was offered a seat. Not as a token, not for optics, but because she had earned it. She accepted and walked into her first official meeting without celebration or ceremony. She brought no entourage, no lawyer, only facts. Inside the boardroom, she presented a list of former employees wrongfully dismissed, evidence of racial bias in departmental cuts, a rewritten proposal for staff protection and accountability protocols, a revised mission statement, one written originally as a final essay for her Ethics in Corporate Law class. One board member, Mr. Jared Young, who had previously signed her layoff, sat frozen. He finally cleared his throat. We didn't know. Imani met his eyes. You didn't want to. Silence. Then a nod. Outside the boardroom, change was already rippling. A viral post titled Number Imani Effect appeared on LinkedIn. A trending Twitter thread began, How a Night Janitor Changed a Fortune 500 Boardroom. People began asking, who else have we ignored? Who else deserves a seat at the table? And Imani? She didn't post a thing. She didn't need to. The truth was speaking loud enough. 3 weeks after Brent Wallace's suspension, Bridgemont was no longer the company it used to be. The restructuring plan was frozen indefinitely. An independent task force reviewed every department that had faced downsizing. Several former employees, janitors, technicians, support staff, were invited back, this time with formal apologies and fair contracts. A new emergency fund was announced for lower-income staff, covering medical emergencies, housing assistance, and bereavement leave. It was named the Celeste Initiative after Imani's late mother, who had scrubbed floors for decades without once receiving sick pay or recognition before dying from untreated cancer. When Imani saw her mother's name printed on the company's homepage in gold letters, she quietly stepped into the women's restroom, locked the door, and cried. Not from sadness, from significance. For the first time in her life, she felt like the world had listened. Some board members wanted her to stay. They offered her a role in internal legal affairs, a seat on the Ethics and Culture Committee, even a senior policy position. She turned them all down. "I didn't do this to sit at your table," she said. "I did this to make sure no one like my mother gets swept off the floor again." She still lived in the same apartment, still took the same late train, still studied at night. But now when she walked through the doors of Bridgemont, everyone knew her name. They didn't see a shadow. They saw a reckoning. Imani always greeted the security guards. She smiled at the new receptionist. She thanked the cafeteria workers, especially the ones who still kept their heads down. One day, Adele Monroe, the same board member who once signed Imani's dismissal, stopped her in the hallway. "I don't know how to fix what I've done," she said softly. "Not just to you, to so many." Imani paused, then replied, "Start by listening and stop saying, 'We're doing fine,' when no one's asking if the janitor eats lunch in the break room." Bridgemont began to change, not through PR, not because they were forced, but because someone made them look inward and face who they had become. All without yelling, all without revenge, only the truth. On the final evening of the week, Imani left the Bridgemont building at 10:17 p.m. She didn't exit through the front doors, the ones lined with cameras, applause, and polite praise. She slipped quietly out the back hallway, the one her mother had used for 29 years without anyone noticing. The wind was light against her skin. Her footsteps echoed across the concrete. She passed the storage closet where she once scribbled case notes during her breaks, past the third-floor restroom where she had once overheard cruel laughter, past the remnants of her past, and left them right where they belonged. In her bag was a notebook, worn, filled cover to cover, labeled simply, "Truth Table." She didn't need it anymore. Everything that needed to be said had already been done. Imani looked up at the night sky. The city was still buzzing, still glowing, but inside her, there was peace. No one thought she would do it. They thought she was just the girl with the mop. But what they didn't know was this. Sometimes the one who scrubs the floor knows exactly where the rot begins. She didn't burn down the system. She simply stripped away the lies. And then she walked away, leaving behind a quiet storm that would change everything.